welcome to Search with Sean, and this is a chat with Sean episode. We haven't done one of these in a while, actually, so looking forward to this one and see I've got a great guest who I'll get into in a second. First of all, as usual, some housekeeping, but I'm going to keep this light because, I want to get into the topics. But yeah, I've just dropped the latest SEO and AI news episode. I covered over 40 stories. It's quite a long one. I haven't done it in a while. And obviously there's so much going on in search and in AI and digital marketing generally. So a lot to catch up on. And and obviously we don't just cover the normal stories, core updates and all those things, which are interesting, but we also try and cover some obscure stories, especially around AI, because there's so many developments going on at the moment. So really, really interesting. So yeah, I'll cut to the chase because time's limited. So I want to get onto the topic. So yeah, the intro, Andy Holland, director of SEO at digital marketing agency JBH. He is also a writer for Marketing Week and Search Engine Land. So I'm sure you've seen him around. And honestly, Andy, I hope you don't mind me calling you Andy, by the way.
Yeah, cool.
Is that? So yeah, I mean, obviously, I've got to say this off the bat that when I see your post on LinkedIn, you're one of the few of the people that I have to stop and read it because you say so much sense. There's a few like yourself, like Lily Ray or Leila Solis or Mark Williams Cook, Daniel Foley Carter, like these sort of people I have to I have to read these. So it's such a privilege to have you on. So thank you.
Pleasure, and thank you so much for doing this. And I think people who podcast like yourself really deserve a lot of credit because you're helping people like myself get our names out there, but also two, helping get our points of view around SEO and giving that a larger voice. And I appreciate all the effort that goes into a podcast because I'm too lazy to do one on my own. So it's I keep meaning to. But thank you very much, Sean, and thank you for the patience you've shown in getting me on as a guest because I'm a nightmare to track down and reply to things. So thank you very much.
No, I know you're a busy man, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, just a heads up on this one as well to all the people watching that. All these chats are also on Spotify, so you go on Spotify, type in "chat with Sean," you'll also find them all on there. So if you're on the go or whatever, you prefer that platform, then do drop it on Spotify. So yeah, let's get into the topics because we got a lot to cover and time's limited. So I want to cover as much as we can. And obviously, I've tried to look at trends going on, but also what you've been posting about yourself. And we discussed this in a latest episode, Real Talk with Sean, and with the guests I had on there. But what do you believe is the future of tech SEO? Because obviously a lot of been a lot of news around what AI can do in terms of coding and that kind of thing. The likes of Zuckerberg have said, coding, they can do mid-level jobs sort of in terms of that. So yeah, well, I'd be interested to hear your take on
it. Tech SEO is dead. Get out now. That's my take on it. And that's going to upset a lot of tech SEOs. I can't code, Luke. So years ago, to give you some analogy, I didn't ever think of myself as a tech SEO. I've always been like a content-focused SEO, which might shock people because I've got really bad views about content as well. So, which I'm sure we'll get to. But the idea behind tech SEO is largely it mostly fix issues with web development. That's the reality of it. So websites get put together. Tech SEO helps search engines crawl and index the websites, and in itself, there's nothing wrong with that. And for years, tech SEO has been largely a little bit oversold with Core Web Vitals and Mobile Get and all those kind of things that went on, and it's become a big beast. And I get that, and I get there's a lot of people who feel tech SEO was a safety net, and many people went down the route of tech SEO. But the problem with that is that right now platforms are going to fix their own tech SEO issues. It's code at the end of the day, and AI can code. Hrefs has already produced something I think called Patches, which you add a bit of code into your website and Patches goes and fixes all the problems. And considering what people are building out there with AI and all the stuff about SaaS and the future of SaaS industries and so forth, it's almost like ludicrous to think that tech SEO as a career survives in that world, and it doesn't. And the same thing that has impacted content with AI is going to impact tech SEO with AI. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to need tech SEO consultants, and who can do this stuff. What I mean by that is, if I was an SEO right now, I wouldn't be trying to go down the tech SEO route. I wouldn't suddenly be trying to learn all the tech SEO skills, because realistically, people are just going to press a button to fix a lot of problems, and the SaaS platforms themselves are going to eat a lot of SEO agency work up, because Href, SEMrush, they'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger and go straight to the consumer and so forth. So my advice is, if you're in tech SEO now, is to start thinking of a way out. And I wrote about this the other day, that where tech SEOs can thrive now is to pivot into AI, APIs, and workflows, because they have those really cool tech skills, the Python and all that kind of stuff. So I don't see that tech SEO is this dying industry. I think it's going to change. So when I say get out of tech SEO, it's like, now you need to be forward thinking to the next step in your career, and start working with AI, the APIs, start having that skill set, and be the person that can implement AI fixes on a website. You aren't doing it anymore. What you're going from is the doer to the overseer, and somebody who can build the infrastructure to deliver that outside of, because, there's going to be more complicated websites with millions of URLs and things like that. So I don't mean that tech SEO, like, as a career, how should I describe this, is a career it's necessarily going to end for people just like that. What I mean to say is, I wouldn't go into tech SEO, and if you're going into it, get out. And when I say get out, go on the other side of tech SEO. Go forward into AI and tech SEO, and to be the overseer. But I don't think what we need is any more people coming into tech SEO. There just aren't going to be the jobs for them. So if you're trying to go down that route, or you're in that route, or you're a tech SEO executive and things like that, then really you need to be pushing ahead. And tech SEO executives really can leap those people ahead of them in the industry, those seniors who maybe are a bit fixated about still saving a dying industry. What did someone say the other day, a couple of months ago? A tech SEO said, tech migrations will need to always be done by humans. And they commented on a post about it, and I was like, no, it's going to be done by machines. Literally, AI can detect cancers and things like that. And they've got people using AI to do surgery with robots and stuff in hospitals. The fact, all it takes is for a SaaS platform like SEMrush or Hrefs or one of the others to absolutely own this tech SEO space, and they take away the doing. That doesn't mean the knowledge of knowing how it's done, if it's done right, isn't there. But it's not going to need more people coming in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think like what you say is around, and that's kind of what I said it in the latest episode around AI. Amazon, sorry, was saying that to their staff members that, like you said, it's not about you're going to be made redundant, but you have to move on and learn new skills and upskill yourself in, like you say, artificial intelligence and stuff. And like you say, there's so much opportunity there in terms of learning about automation and prompting and stuff. It's just I find it fascinating, because it's good at, if you get really good at automation using API feeds and stuff, you're going to make everyone in the company's job a lot easier. So I think that's definitely the way forward. And in terms of, why should, this is kind of moving on from tech to more content focused, but why should people move away from keywords to problem focused SEO? I saw your post on this. I thought it's really great point, and something that got brought up. It's been brought up quite a lot now.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I have a lot of bugbears of the SEO industry. In fact, I've just literally put a post online. It's just a massive rant about the SEO influencer circle, about what's going on out there, and just the sheer dross. So there's a couple of issues here, and I'll go quite deep if that's okay. So the thing with content, so the idea behind content is that it's been mass published because people like HubSpot did it and other SEO platforms did it, and look at their revenue. So they must be doing really well. And then somebody will say, oh, yeah, our blog generates loads of leads and sales and all this kind of stuff. So we've ended up with this idea behind everybody wants to mass produce content, have as much content as you can, traffic. But that doesn't work. So outside of SEO, if you speak to anybody in marketing, they don't think about their blog as a sales driver, they're busy wanting to advertise on TV. They're busy wanting to advertise on digital channels. They don't think about their blog. Somebody ends up doing it, and it's part of the SEO budget, and they just, they let people get on with it. And now some of that traffic later converts into revenue, and everyone's deeply trying to get some kind of attribution model to support their own job and so forth. And what you've had is the result of everyone wanting this make believe that all you need to do is publish blog content to grow. You've ended up with this almost like collapse of the content industry, because in the last few years, you can go on LinkedIn and everyone, how many content strategists, content writers, copywriters are all scratching around for work because the industry's, people have gone down the route of what's working in my marketing. So marketing effectiveness is a huge subject now in marketing, because people want more from less from their marketing budgets, and they want to know what's working. So content, when you actually look at that, you look at it through a detailed microscope, well, it doesn't actually do what people say. And the reason why this is actually is well established and documented. So the subject of information architecture and science has been around for donkey's years. It's been around since the dawn of time. Information is how, as a species, we've evolved and grown societies. So information studies around there for a while, but people have wrongly thought of information as advertising, and this blog content as advertising in the digital realm. Now, what happens is, as somebody, we consume a tremendous amount of content all day long. People go and read that content, and I read loads. And then what happens is they forget about that content. And there's something called the forgetting curve. And it's a well-documented phenomenon that unless we use information, we lose information. And we lose it in a matter of days. I mean, I'm sure, Sean, you've been on a course where you've gone on a course or something, or it's online or real world, and you walk out that course on the Friday, having done it all week, and by the Wednesday next week, you can't really remember much about it because you're not using it in your day-to-day work. And that's what happens. It's called the forgetting curve. It's because our working memory can't store that kind of information. And what people wrongly think is their blog glossary or something like that, or their blog article on teamwork actually led to somebody signing up for a 6-figure deal on a SaaS platform for HR. It's just absurd, because the metrics don't work that way. The brain doesn't work that way. And that's why the advertising industry, which is massively bigger than the SEO industry, focuses on things like stories and emotion, because those are the things we remember. Now, that's how the ecosphere works. Where I say focus on problems, and because when you've got a problem that needs solving, and that's what your business does, is solve that problem for somebody, people are far closer. They're in the buyer intent mode. They're looking for a solution. And I'll give you a very, very clear example. So a few years ago, I had a legal issue that I needed solving quite quickly. I wasn't in trouble with the law or anything like that. It was a financial thing, and I wanted some information about it. And realistically, I searched blog after blog. I read loads of blogs, and in the end, there was a blog article which answered gave me a lot of information. And at the top right corner was book a consultation. Now, you had to pay for that consultation. And within less than 12 hours of me having this problem, needing to get the answers and wanting to have a solution, I booked it like £150 or £50 consultation from a piece of content that gave me information about my problem. And I went and booked it and clicked and jumped straight in to that. I'm basically doing straight in, and it's, that person earned money from that sale because he was talking about the problem that I had, and I was in the market to fix that problem and I needed it solving. So when you go outside of what they call the problem environment and information foraging theory, is what you're doing is just providing information and entertainment for a few seconds, and you're not going to, someone's not going to remember you. It's unlikely. Yes, there's a little bit of brand impact, but it's not likely. And other sides, the other thing is people in SEO especially look at things they're reading and prescribing and thinking, oh yeah, that matters. Like Hrefs does a lot of blogs on SEO, and so does SEMrush, and they put studies out and so forth, so forth. But most people are always open to information that helps them perform better in their day-to-day life. And that's not the same as buying necessarily ready to buy. It's a two different things. So if you're focused on keywords, especially topical keywords, you can waste a lot of budget, time, and effort chasing metrics that really don't matter and don't add value. So I am an absolute now. I'm a person who says create content only when necessary and when there's a good business case for it that you can strongly say to people, yeah, we do this and it's going to lead to this. Whether that's an SEO outcome like links, or whether that's a business outcome like leads and sales. But there are far easy ways to generate eyeballs on your brand than pumping out blog content that gets read and forgotten the second after it's read.
So yeah, just on that point around the problem focus SEO, what I was thinking, like, how do SEOs discover or find the problem? In the first place, how would you go around actually finding what the actual real problem is and making sure that you're resolving that, I guess.
Yeah, there's a couple of issues there. One, as an SEO agency, it's very hard to do this. By the way, I'm not saying it is. So if you, so for example, as an SEO agency, I don't produce content. I am 100% on landing pages, products and services pages, and very rare do I ever create any content or work on content outside of that, unless I'm asked to. And the reason for that is because predominantly I work with sites that already got traffic and want to have the rankings increased and so forth. So I'm optimizing. So if you're an SEO in-house or if you're an agency, it's challenging. But in-house or agency aside, the mechanics are the same. You have to understand the problem that you solve and then find the search traffic around that problem that buyers are using. So you have to go on that search journey to understand how buyers are interacting, what they're searching for, what kind of content they have. And very often, most of that's incredibly low traffic for the vast majority of the industries out there. But that doesn't mean anything because, sometimes you don't need to spend a fortune creating content. You can create a very nice article very quickly, in 30 minutes, even for some things. And sometimes it's just showing up. So you have to know the problem that your business solves and you have to talk about that problem. And generally speaking, that's where all the money is. And that means we don't have these big traffic graphs. We don't need to talk about traffic graphs and things like that. It's a vanity thing. I get why people share them and so forth, but generally speaking, it's not really the thing that matters. It's not going to lead to the revenue that people think it will. And that's, there's easier ways to do that. You don't need to spend money on SEO to build an email list and things like that. There's other ways to do it. And it's about effectiveness first and then efficiency second, like advertising is. So yeah, it's hard, but you have to know what you do, what your business solves, what the actual problem is. So to give you an analogy, that if you're a SaaS, for example, let's say you're a SaaS platform that specializes in helping disabled people to get access to trains and things like that, then, you don't need to be answering every single question out there in relation to a disability. And, I say this because I consulted once for a platform like this. You don't need to answer every single question there's on disability in the hope that somebody becomes aware you exist. There are other more effective ways to do that. But somebody who's booking a train might be after knowing a certain train station's disabled access routes and things like that would matter to them at that particular time and so forth. So that's a really out there example where you focus on the problem your consumers have that you solve and you try and reach them on that buyer journey, and you will probably stand a far better chance of one converting them to for them even understanding what you're about. Because they're in that market with that problem, so you have to know your customers.
I was just saying, really interesting points, and this is why it's important, I guess, to actually know what the key conversions are in your organization, and also work together with other teams so you don't work in your silo and you don't just go after SEO, like you say, vanity metrics, and also attribution, like something that is very difficult to do, but very interesting once you understand the different channels, how they work together and how they're sort of contributing to it. And also what you kind of said on, it's interesting because the topical side of it. So I'm doing some deep digging into large language models and how they're, trying to back engineer sort of the paths that maybe are being, that are going to our most popular pages that large language models are pushing traffic towards. And it's very clear that, and I've been talking, like doing some deep research using their AI tools and stuff. And it's very clear that when you're going, like covering a topic, like you say, you don't steer too far away from the original idea, but also you do cover it in that sort of, detailed manner. So it's a very, it's a gray area, but you don't veer too much outside the realms of what you're talking about, but also cover it in enough detail that they actually do get what they need from that, like you say, the problem. So yeah, really interesting that that's what they're considering when they're looking at that stuff. Yeah, we'll move on. Obviously, we bounce around a bit. So, and this is one that's obviously, you've been talking a lot about. So how can SEOs optimize for word embeddings to maximize search visibility without relying on outdated keyword strategies? Obviously, we've discussed a little about keywords, but yeah, obviously this thing around word embeddings is intriguing. Obviously, you post a lot about it.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, there's a bit of background to this, but I'll explain what it was. So, about 18 months ago, um, there's a bit of a shift in the marketplace, and if you look at data, you'll see all of a sudden people started not ranking for things that you would think they would rank for. People ranked for things that they shouldn't rank for, and we had clients coming to us saying, "Luke, why am I not ranking? Why are these ranking when I've got all these metrics and stuff?" And it was bizarre, and it's still bizarre now out there now as you go and look at a lot of different niches. So we ended up with this problem to solve, and it led me down to a whole different world of figuring out why. And then I ended up, funnily enough, stumbling on different subjects like NLP, natural language processing, parsing, all this kind of stuff that I went down the rabbit hole of. And it was quite clear that Google was relying more on embeddings, and embeddings is part of natural language process, so they could understand your page more. And so I ended up going on this route. We ended up trying and testing things with clients, and it was very rapid and it worked. And then building a system around this place. So the first thing is to think about embeddings is it's not like you can't really optimize for it. And that's where people go wrong. I don't optimize for embeddings. Like what I'm actually doing is optimizing for information gain rate. So I've gone away from any traditional SEO metrics whatsoever. So, and I use multiple data sources, and I've got my own custom GPT that we use. And what I'm doing is going away from the traditional, this is how you skyscraper content, or this is what content should be, or this is the framework. And I actually have a look at what is both ranking out there and what's delivering the biggest keyword yield for a particular keyword, because web pages can't rank for everything. Some need to rank for a specific thing. Some want to rank for more than one thing and rank for as much as possible. So we're in the business of effectiveness of SEO and increasing visibility for people. So with information gain rate, the idea is quite simple. It comes from information foraging theory, which has been around for a long time. And the idea that humans search for patches of information and consume those patches and move on. So you need to make the patch, easier to consume, easier for people to see that it's of value and so forth. And there's a big part of it. And what I'm doing is I'm increasing the rate of gain of information. So we're basically getting rid of fluff. We're getting rid of making it harder for people to get the information they want. And we're making sure that the information they get is the right information. And all of this comes back to grammar. Good grammar, which NLP tools are trained on, and so forth. And the reason why it works is twofold. One, because natural language processing can parse the text easier and understand it, what your topic is. And two, humans can too. So I'm not trying to do things because I want to I'm gaming Google or anything like that. The object is to create people first content and give them the information they need as quickly as possible, as easy as possible, and not make people work for it. Now, this is in contrast to the last 10 years of SEO, which has generally been about word count, where SEOs would create a brief using one of the standard industry tools based on what's already there and told the writers to go make this better, go make this bigger, go make this longer. And writers were given I've turned this into 3,000 words. I want 5,000 words. Well, at a certain point, the writer's not an expert in that subject. and finding words to shove into a landing page or a blog article, they don't benefit from it. They don't benefit from making that page more informative. They benefit from making it the minimum viable thing that they can get away with, because that's natural human tendency. A writer will create a great piece of content at 1,000 words, but and if you ask them to add another 2,000, they'll water it down and stick things into sentences because they think, oh no, I've got another 2,000 words to go. And what am I going to write in here? So you end up with wordy, fluffy content, lots of stop words, filler words, lots of salesy stuff, And I was reading one the other day that they give you a classic example where an SEO agency, by the way, this is, and I can't name them, had used the phrase gold standard. Now, I actually don't even know which one they are. I just found it when I was crawling for information about and looking for examples, and they're not ranking, but they add in their webpage the gold standard of SEO. Well, to me and you, we know what they're trying to get at, the gold standard of SEO. But to a machine, that's like, okay, well, why are we talking about gold standard and SEO, two different subjects in the same sentence? And the other thing is, it's kind of meaningless anyway. It's just fluff. You say something's the gold standard of SEO. What does it even mean? It's meaningless. So all I'm trying to do with this whole embeddings thing really is focus on the information that buyers need. And also that happens to be the same information that natural language processing relies on to understand topics. And that's all it is. But yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's actually what is clear when I'm doing this like large language model deep dive. It's like that is how they're processing information. That's 100%, because the main page that we're getting traffic to for a large language model is very clean and crisp. It gets straight to the point on the answers. There's no fluff, anything like that. And it is clear. Like, and obviously that's what they say, they're just they just need the answers. And that's what like you say, that's what humans do. If you go to a doctor or something, you just want to know what the problem is. You don't want to know you don't really want to talk about how your day's been and all that rubbish. You just want to get what's the problem with me and how can we resolve it? I was going to say, actually, yeah, on Perplexity, this is what I like about Perplexity, is they obviously number their sources, and next to the actual information they put down for a query, they tell you what source is kind of related to that point that they're discussing, which gives you a really good indication on terms of like if it's your content, like what are you covering well and what maybe you could be covering better if others are getting, picked as that resource. So I thought that's quite cool on Perplexity. They do that kind of thing. So yeah, just moving on, because I know time's, catching up with us. In terms of, we talked about tech roles. Obviously, you've talked about your thoughts on the current status search in SEO and stuff, but what do you see as like in terms of other roles? What do you think are the next big roles in search? Is it all AI focused? Is it literally just prompt engineers? Is it, where do you see like the content writers and the, the normal sort of every SEO kind of, the ones that do it all sort of thing? Where do you see them going next?
Okay, so this is a really interesting one. And so there's a marketer called Rory Sutherland. I don't know if you know him, but he's very famous. And he wrote a beautiful LinkedIn post the other day. And it talked about AI agents. And AI agents are coming. They're coming. Nobody's really prepared for them and how they're going to change their life. And I wrote an article for Marketing Week that hopefully they'll publish, which talks about AI agents themselves, and also talks about Rory Sutherland's post. But what Rory is saying is that the greatest shifts in history are context and interface. And so right now, the internet and Google is the content and interface. But if you were to go and watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, if you're a Star Trek or a Trek fan, I mean, I dip in and out of the franchise for years, but I used to be a Next Generation fan. I used to love that. And in the Next Generation, all they used to do is they used to say things like, computer, make me an Earl Grey tea, or computer, where is this? Or computer, do this. They were never using Google or search engines. And if you think about that, and Star Trek, obviously the writers of Star Trek have to think very futuristically. They obviously had advisors, scientific advisors. And if you go and look for things like Minority Report, which is a Steven Spielberg film with Tom Cruise of old now, but very good, they had tons of tech advisors talk about what the future would be like. What I mean. And the way you're looking at this is there was no interface to search. People got given information when they asked for it, and it compiled things. And if you think about deep research, not the your deep research tool and ChatGPT and others, bottoming DeepSeek and everything else, but their deep research does that for you, and it does it quite fast, compared to what we're used to. So there's going to be a change of context and interface, and we're going to consume the internet from devices from within platforms. So another side story. I when I was at the boxing club of, doing some coaching the other week, and I showed the coaches ChatGPT, and I said, "Look how good this is," and I said, "Let's do a boxing training session," and it did it for us. Created the training session in seconds, and then a few weeks later, a few months later, actually, really, it was just a few weeks. They come to me and said, "Oh, we've got AI now." And these are guys in their late 50s and mid 60s. Someone just turned 65, one of us. And he says, "I've got AI now." And it's inside Facebook Messenger, and it did exactly the same as ChatGPT did. So what's happening is people are going to access AI from wherever they are. And whether my daughter's got a Snapchat AI she's created called Sassy Sharon or something like that. And that's supposed to give her advice and stuff when she asks questions to it. We're going to see this change, and the interface and context is going to change. And this is the potential Google killer. So Google is the middleman of information. They collect and crawl the internet and give us that. Where they've gone massively and strategically wrong with this is they've not considered agents within the platforms that we consume content. Yes, they have YouTube. Yes, they have Gmail and Docs and so on, which is that their safety net, but they don't consider the interface and the context. Look at Uber, for example, and how it changed the taxi industry and so forth. And Airbnb is a thing you go to knowing what you're going to get. So when we search for things, what we're going to do is we're not going to be going to Google. We're going to be getting computers to do the searching for us. So the future roles isn't actually SEO is going to die or anything like that. And I think people wrongly make these assumptions because search engines still work. It's going to be a more technical play in terms of how do you get brands to be recommended in what the computer gives as your results. And that's going to mean bigger SEO. It means the industry is going to be bigger because every platform is going to rely on its own data to an extent before it goes outside. So, for example, if your client base is a heavy user of Facebook AI and Meta's AI, you might want to be sure that you rank in those suggestions, and that's using a different approach as an LLM. You might want to make sure if your users are on TikTok and they're using a TikTok AI, which hasn't been launched yet, but it will be, I'm sure. You want to make sure that you show up in their training data, and that could be probably in their platform and beyond their platform and so forth. So I think SEO as an industry will get bigger. But the problem with all of this, is that when it happens, it'll just happen overnight like this. It'll just go. One day, people will be finding businesses and brands with Google, and the next minute, everyone's using AI agents within platforms and ordering pizza from Facebook by just saying, "Facebook, order me a pizza." That's what's coming with all of this. Now, for SEO industry, it's difficult because you've got to be able to provide a product, and you can't just say, "Oh yeah, we're going to be the SEO for everything." And this is another problem: search everything as an industry, as a concept. It doesn't matter the fact that search happens everywhere. The fact is, how do you productize that as an SEO agency, or as a business, or as a company? So what I think you're going to find is that these platforms are going to need SEO within them. It's going to be hard to do and hard to deliver, and it's going to be hard to productize, but we'll find a way. Everyone will do. The industry will. And you'll probably end up having looking at consumers where they use AI is going to be the next big thing. Where do consumers use AI until there becomes like a generic agent that people use on their phone? Like Samsung's got its own AI that's plugged into Google, Apple's got its own AI that's plugged into its search engine and so forth. Amazon's got its own AI now and so forth. So it's going to get more complicated, and it's going to get more difficult, and there's going to be a lot of disruption in the SEO industry, and ultimately it's going to be a lot of figuring out. But I think it's going to be very fluid as well for a long period of time about how that's done. But when it happens, what I do think is going to come in is recommendations. So I think, like you've got paid ad search now, I think when you ask whatever AI you're on and say, find me 10 hotels in Rome for families, and it go off, it'll provide you 5 organic results, and then it'll 5 that have paid to be there. So I think that's what will happen. You'll have paid for recommendations, or being paid within the LLM structure, so to speak, within the AI structure. So I think there's going to be optimization opportunities. There's no doubt about that. I think it's going to be hard. I think also publicity is going to be a major factor into that as well. So what's going on? But that's kind of where I think things are heading.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that, and some great points. And yeah, like you say as well, like, doing the news and stuff, I see it. Like one news, I'll be like, oh, these things are coming. The next news, a couple of weeks later, oh, it's here. Like things are like, could AI replicate itself? Could it duplicate itself? Like that was a question a couple of weeks ago. Now it's done it. It's already done it. And so these things are happening. And like you say, there's ChatGPT tasks. Alexa brought out like advanced AI into their Alexa models now, where you can order your groceries and stuff directly from Alexa. So these things are happening. So yeah, I think that'd be really, really interesting, isn't it? It's gonna change the game, but it's gonna make things still keep us on our toes. And I think it's really interesting, actually. I'm kind of excited about the future, if I'm honest, because, and what I do suggest to people is there's some people that worked in SEO for a while still don't really understand how search engines work. And obviously, I think people like Mark Williams could always suggest this, but just use like things like Notebook LM or whatever to really or deep research on ChatGPT to really kind of understand how search engines work. And I say I've been digging into the different ones like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and actually because they work differently. And I think it's like you've got the historical data they're working from, you've got the live search data, and that all works differently. So you really actually have to understand how they operate. I think just taking your time out of your day, just stop doing all your kind of keyword research and stuff, and actually take time to sit down and actually understand how these models work. I think it's like priceless in a way. And this next question is around, can you explain kind of push and pull content method and its benefits? Because I found this fascinating. Again, a post around that.
Yeah, so I didn't invent push and pull content, by the way. But I also would change it. So I like the name. So and it comes from a book called Content Design, and the lady's name is Sarah that wrote it. I can't remember her last name off the top of my head. But basically, push and pull content is it talks about content in general, and this is where like I think this is an important thing, because push content, or this is the terminology I talk about it in. So pull content is what you're doing is you're pulling users from search engine queries and search queries to your website. So you're pulling them onto your platform with the search engine content. And that arguably is like, there's a small amount of window there that you can get, because people are searching with the query, with the problem they have. They're searching for solutions. So you want to rank and pull people to your website. Push content is when you're creating content around your problem that you're not doing for search, or what you're trying to do is get it out there to the consumers. And there's a couple ways to do it. You can push it out via digital PR, and leverage publishers and media platforms and say, hey, Luke, we want to talk about this problem and we want to push it out there, and you're going to help us because we've got this great story for you. And they push it out to you. And the other side is you push it out, and you can push it out, and maybe you can get on the Google Discovery feed, because you're an industry, you're creating your own news content, so to speak. Or maybe you can push it out through manual promotion and social media, and which is what a lot of people do these days with LinkedIn and X and Facebook, and you can pay for things to be pushed out, and it's quite cheap to do that. And it's a tactic that people don't really use as much as they should. But yeah, that's the concept really, and there's a lot of gold in push. Because plus you're not confined by structure, you're not confined by keywords. You can talk about the problem and you can write creatively as a human. And also you can use AI to assist you to create that kind of push content. And that's arguably a good way to do that. So push content, I think, is the future. Now, and I say that because I'm in this industry, but I say that because what's happening is brands are being picked in micro moments. But for example, micro content can absolutely impact decisions and buying decisions. So if you've got a problem right now, let's say you've got a dog and that dog's got some dietary issues and you've searched a bit, not found the answer you want, or something interrupted that, and all of a sudden an article pops up on your feed because the algorithms are working their wonders. You have an article from a vet brand itself, a food brand, talks about why your dog has this particular issue, and it's perfect for you. You read it, and then that leads into you becoming a consumer of their product, because right there and then you have that problem, and that brand who solves that problem created content that they pushed out to their consumer or their ideal consumer, or the person with that problem. I hate ICPs as it is, but the person with that problem, they pushed it out. And I think that's important because we're focusing too much on traffic and getting people from search engines and not to going where people are. And there's a huge market there. Now, the problem is how do you justify that as an agency, a fee? How do you structure that? And that's the challenge, because not always is it going to impact things, but as a brand, brands need to get out of this. Everything has to lead to attribution directly format when you're promoting your business, and get into the format as, we solve some pretty important problems. Let's find 1,000 ways to tell people about their problem and how we solve it and how they can solve it with us and so forth. So we're all really busy. I think this is very hard to make large scale attribution, and the AI makes it possible to create lots and lots of content that can go at that same problem. And we're all doing it. Everyone's doing it on LinkedIn these days. So it's no different than that, but it's about getting your content model right, pushing content out to the people with the problem. And some of that will win business and some of that will lead to business. And sometimes you'll be able to attribute that. Sometimes you won't, but it makes sense to talk about the problem you solve and get it out there. It also makes sense to advertise, do publicity and everything else like that. And that, I think that's where businesses and brands have got to be, where they say, you know what, it makes sense. Let's just do it. Let's just try and, we'll get a writer, we'll hire a writer, or we'll hire an agency that we can work with who can get what we're doing. We're going to invest in them. We're going to sign a good contract. And, all we want from you guys is just content all the time, and speak to our team and let us get on with it and so forth. So yeah, that's push content. And I think we need more of it.
Yeah, no, great stuff. And I think we're okay with time to do at least one more topic, and that's cool. So I guess on that, and we discussed this recently in a recent episode, but blogs, how worth it is it to do blogs these days? Because, I am seeing more, and again, Google dominates the search. We know that still. But I do see more large language models push into blog content, which is like, it's unearthing blog content that wasn't usually being picked up by organic. But like you say, that's still a very small portion of the traffic. So is it still worth blogging, and like, how should people do if they are going to do?
It's a fantastic question. And yeah, so I'll try and condense this. Okay, so blogging. I read last night a guy say, I commented on his post and he gave a terrible answer, he did, but he said blogs are dead, forget about it, this, that, and the other. No. Totally and absolutely absurdly wrong. But also is what's not right is doing this topical authority thing and turning it into Wikipedia. It's ridiculous. Every business solves a problem. And within that problem, there are lots of conversations. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a business, And what your job as a blogger or vlogger, whatever you want to call it, to create content, it makes sense. One, because we don't know what people are going to type into search engines, and LLMs, by the very nature of them, will find things that match what you type in as closely as possible. And with embeddings and vectors, search engines are better at finding the right information for you, despite what people think. Just because SEOs don't get all the traffic there, they don't see that search engines actually don't do a bad job most of the time. So with blogs, I recommend people write what they want, when they want, how they want, because they think this would be a good piece of content for their target audience and it would help them to solve the problem. And it's related to the problem you solve and help them to understand it better why you are a good solution for them. So that's content marketing. But what you've got to understand is that brands are unlikely to make a lot of money back from content marketing in terms of traditional search metrics. And also, brands have got to have a promotional strategy around that content. So, blogging, I've got a blog to write. I write blogs all the time, but I've got a blog. I'm going to do one for our agency because I want to do one and it makes sense on the subject. It won't rank in search engines. It won't at all. I've got no intention for it to, but I will promote it and I'll send it out to people and say, I've written this piece of content. I'll be proud of it. And the consumers will hopefully potentially like it and find it useful. So blog when you've got something worth saying around the problem, and you should always have something worth saying around the problem you solve. And the problem you solve probably has lots and lots of variations to it. And don't do it because you're trying to make money from it, because that's not the right way, or trying to make money from an article and so forth. Do it because it makes sense to do it. And in some markets, there is keywords and search traffic to go on those blogs and go and get after. And in some markets, there isn't. And you're writing stuff entirely new that's never been searched for before. And that's the thing you want to push. So blogs are fantastic. They always will be fantastic. I read content constantly. I'm sure you do, Sean. I'm sure all our buyers read content. And the where it goes wrong is when you go chasing keywords to blog, because a lot of those keywords just aren't right fit, and you create content like the shrug emoji article for HubSpot that everyone talks about. So, if HubSpot were talking more about CRMs and customer relationship management and things like that, and that, obviously that's what they wish they do, if they dominate those sectors anyway. It's that kind of thing that they want to be talking about, not shrug emojis, and it goes back to everyone else. So yeah, blogging is massive. It's not going anywhere. It's just people are doing it wrong.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that, when I was looking into it, it seems like the likes of ChatGPT don't want to be sending people to service pages basically, but want to rather send people to blogs instead. And yeah, generally, like, you can't fit everything onto your main landing pages. You want to keep them clean and crisp and straight to the point, as we were saying earlier. So blogs are a great way to then discuss certain other topics in that area that in a bit more detail. But and obviously you can add in like user experiences, videos, so on and so forth. So yeah, but obviously when you start going into like strange areas that you don't usually cover, then it becomes a bit less. As we've seen, like with Forbes and things like that recently, I guess is a good one to wrap it up on because of your background. But how at the moment, in terms of like these tricky times, not just in search, but also out in the economy, it's hard times for everyone pretty much. How do you manage to keep clients happy, and also where do you see the future for SEO agencies going forward in the next year or so?
Big question to end off with. Okay, so there's some fast. I wish I had the book titles here, and I'll try and find them for you so you can establish it, so you can give it to your listeners and viewers. So there's some fantastic resources out there and books out there that talk about consulting and everything else like that, and the fact that an actual fact is, you can't always keep clients happy, and you shouldn't keep clients happy is a strong argument, because the idea is with consulting is you give value. And SEO agencies they do consultancy as part of every SEO agency contract everyone does, and you're aiming to give value. What clients really want, in truth, is for you to wave a magic flag and get them earning money. And sometimes that doesn't materialize, and you can't keep all clients happy, and you won't keep clients forever. And I think we've got to get used to, in this world, is understanding that you can't keep every client happy, because it doesn't matter how good you are explaining what you do and everything else like that. We are working in an industry where we're totally reliant on other things, namely algorithms and platforms that we don't directly control. And you're doing it in an industry where people are already far further ahead often than you are. And also, the budget you're working with is ridiculously small. And I always have this like saying where I say, someone's offering you 30 grand a year as an SEO retainer to solve a £350,000 a year paid search problem. And the reality is that when you look at it through that lens, there's no way you're going to solve that problem in the same way. So a lot of the time, it isn't about keeping clients happy. You can't keep clients happy. You can offer a service. People can buy that service, and you can suggest that if you do this, with the budget you have, that's the best results we can get. Now, on a real terms, people don't sell SEO like that, because you wouldn't sell anything if you were, like, brutally honest, and nobody would. And SEO is very optimistic. It's an optimistic industry, and SEO clients tend to be optimistic about success and results. And sometimes that's overly optimistic, and it's not really. Sorry, my dog's jumped on the bed. I mean, it's not really up to the agencies to cut off the optimism with a dose of realism. And people say you have to manage expectations. Every SEO agency out there manages expectations. They all do, as a natural part of it, but also they wouldn't win any business unless they sold SEO. Now, what I say to people, and it's a good phrase I use, is SEO is a rationally optimistic marketing channel with huge potential upsides. So it's right to invest in SEO, but you also have to be realistic around the timeline that you generate results. If you haven't got SEO as a retainer of your business, I would be asking questions about why you are letting other brands win from search. So I always say to people, why haven't you got SEO, and why haven't you got PR, and where's that budget going to? Because there's going to be a huge body of potential customers that you can reach with search engine optimization that's going to win you more business. Now, the reality is that if you're a 7-figure business, a multi-7-figure business, turnover, and you hire a $3,000 a month or $2,000 a month SEO agency, the idea that SEO agency is going to turn around for $2,000 a month and make you a double your current turnover and revenue is largely absurd. To say you're going to spend 30 grand or whatever on SEO, and that's going to equate to another $1 million in revenue in the next 6 months. That's a really unrealistic thing, but that is what people believe in SEO. Now, the reality is that SEO requires significantly more budget than that. Not in every level. Obviously, if you're doing it for a sandwich shop, it's different and things like that. But for most businesses with a multi-million-pound turnover who can afford SEO, you need to spend significant revenue. And if you don't, that's fine too. You spend what you can, and then hopefully what happens during the length of time you're spending on SEO, other people stop spending. And that's when you can make up. And also, hopefully you hire an SEO company that uses the right strategy and has the good rhetoric to maximize every penny of your budget, and use things like we're talking about, like embeddings and things like that, and optimizing information game rates, and those tactics hopefully will get you as far as you can. But realistically, SEO is a channel, it's a marketing channel. It's crucially underinvested in, it's critically underinvested in, criminally underinvested in even. And that's just the world we work in. So for me, SEOs, to try and keep client happy, they have to make SEO exciting, which is right. You also have to manage expectations, but not overly manage them so they kill the enthusiasm of the client. But also there has to be realization on the client side that what you're trying to do is really spend a minimal amount of money to make millions, or to generate leads that lead to millions and so forth. And it's highly unlikely. So you have to be realistic. But an SEO retainer is a no-brainer for most businesses. And, a PR retainer is a no-brainer for most businesses. But when you look at the budgets, almost all of it's been sucked into paid search. So, and that's like the equivalent of what's happening in the economy right now, is that you're having wealth sucked out of the economy by the richest, and paid search is sucking out the marketing budgets and going to a single source, which is Google. So, and there's so much data on there, like the long and the short of it and so forth. It says you have to have, a balance of brand and performance and so forth. And this is the issues you have. But also, most businesses criminally underinvest in marketing as well. And that's another problem. So there's a lot going wrong out there. So SEOs, just do what you can, do the good work, be honest, be ethical, try and keep clients as happy as they can, but also understand that you can't always. And that's the hard bit. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, great. And look, we've had loads of gremlins in the system today, so I'm hoping but I can iron this all out. But I mean, I think I could talk to you for hours, but I don't want to keep you on. But yeah, there's so much great stuff, and hopefully I can get you back on at some point, and hopefully, yeah, I could put something together here. But yeah, thank you, Andy, on coming on and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. It's really appreciated.
It's a pleasure, Sean.